My parents disowned me for refusing to fund my sister's wedding after years of paying their bills, so I left, and now they want me back. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and for most of my life, I've been the family wallet. I didn't plan for it to be that way. It just happened. The moment I got my first real job, my parents started leaning on me for every unexpected emergency that somehow only I was responsible for fixing. Medical bills, home repairs, last-minute crises that always seemed to appear right when I finally had some money saved. I covered them all because that's what a good son was supposed to do. At least, that's what I told myself. I used to convince myself I was doing the right thing. I'd sit in my tiny bedroom after wiring them money and whisper, "It's okay, they raised you. This is payback." But every year, the requests got heavier, more entitled, less appreciative. And every time I hesitated, my mom would sigh dramatically and say, "You know your father isn't as strong as he used to be. You don't want us on the street, right?" Meanwhile, my sister Lily floated through life like some sort of princess born into royalty. She never paid for anything, not rent, not tuition, not even her car. She deserves nice things, my parents would say. She's sensitive, she needs support. I'd be sitting right there, exhausted from overtime shifts, listening to them shower her with praise while treating my sacrifices as nothing more than my duty. I remember once telling my dad, "I can't keep covering everything." He looked at me like I'd insulted him. "You're the stable one," he said calmly. "It's your responsibility. Lily has bigger dreams. Don't hold her back." That sentence lodged itself in my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. For years, I ignored the resentment brewing. I kept helping, kept providing, kept pretending this was normal. But something happened, something that finally pushed me past my breaking point. And that's where everything started to unravel. I grew up watching Lily live a life I didn't even know was possible for someone in our income bracket. She always had the newest phone, the nicest clothes, the prettiest room, all while I was told, "Be grateful for what you get. Boys don't need much." I can still hear my mother's voice snapping at me when I'd ask for something simple, like new shoes. "Your sister needs more than you. Don't make everything about yourself." Meanwhile, if Lily so much as blinked at something she wanted, it magically appeared. When I questioned it once, my dad laughed and said, "She's delicate. You're responsible." It's different. Responsible. That word became the chain around my neck. The crazy part is, I let it slide for years. I told myself it wasn't worth fighting over. I swallowed every unfair comparison, every guilt trip, every moment they dismissed my needs, because confronting them felt like lighting a match in a room soaked in gasoline. Peace was easier. Or at least, that's what I thought. Then Lily got engaged. And suddenly, there was no avoiding it. Before I even congratulated her, my mom clapped her hands together and said, "Good thing you make good money. We can finally give Lily the wedding she deserves." They didn't ask. They didn't suggest. They decided. A few days later, as I was leaving for work, my mom said casually, "Make sure you start putting aside money. Weddings aren't cheap, and your family needs you." She said your family the same way someone might say your obligation. Then she added, "Your income belongs to all of us, not just you." I froze in the doorway, feeling something old and painful stir in my chest. Resentment, exhaustion, fear, maybe all of it. And just like that, the pressure was back, heavier than ever, and I could already feel the storm gathering behind it. A week later, my parents called what they dramatically referred to as a family meeting. We never had meetings, not for birthdays, not for emergencies, not even when my grandmother died. So when they asked me to come over after work, I knew something was off. Still, I showed up, hoping it was just about the engagement. Instead, when I walked into the living room, Lily was sitting with a stack of glossy wedding magazines spread across the coffee table like a boardroom presentation. My mom cleared her throat proudly. "We've started planning Lily's big day," she announced, sliding a binder toward me. Inside were vendor quotes, venue options, catering menus, all top tier, all overpriced. I flipped through them, confused. "Wow," I said slowly, "this must be expensive." My dad leaned back and smiled. "That's why you'll handle it." For a moment, I honestly thought he was joking. I waited for a smirk, a laugh, something. But he just stared at me like he'd told me to pick up groceries. "All of it?" I asked. "Of course," my mom said. "You make good money. We upgraded a few things because we knew you could handle it." They weren't asking. They were assigning me a bill. Then Lily chimed in. arms crossed like a disappointed princess. "You owe me anyway," she said. "I've sacrificed emotionally for this family way more than you. This is the least you can do." Something in my chest tightened. "I can help a little," I said carefully, "but I can't pay for an entire luxury wedding. That's not realistic." My mom's face fell instantly, theatrical and heavy. My dad sighed like I just ruined Christmas. Lily rolled her eyes so hard I thought she might pass out. The room went cold, like I'd committed some unforgivable betrayal by saying the word no. And in their silence, their disappointment, their entitlement, I felt the first cracks of something much bigger beginning to form. The days after that meeting felt like stepping into a pressure chamber I never agreed to enter. My parents began calling me every single morning, reminding me of every bill, every surgery, every repair they claimed I owed them back for. My mom would say things like, "We fed you for 18 years, or, "You wouldn't be successful without us." My dad would add, "You're hurting your sister's future by being difficult." It didn't matter what I said. Their guilt trips were a script they'd been perfecting for years. Meanwhile, Lily escalated things in her own way. She started texting me Pinterest boards at 2 a.m., sending vendor lists with notes like, "Pick one by Friday," or "You need to confirm this before prices go up." She even sent countdown timers titled "Days Until You Ruin My Wedding." One afternoon, she called me at work and said, "I hope you understand that as the eldest, this is literally your job. Don't embarrass us." Hearing her say eldest like it was some royal title I'd been assigned at birth made something twist inside me. So I started setting boundaries. Small ones at first. "I can't talk right now. Please stop sending me invoices. I've already said no." But every boundary was treated as a declaration of war. My mom cried. My dad yelled. Lily acted like I'd stolen her crown. It didn't take long for the rest of the family to get involved. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people who hadn't called me in years, suddenly blew up my phone. "I heard you're refusing to help your sister," one aunt snapped. "Shameful. You make so much money. What's wrong with you?" Another relative said. Somebody even told me, "Your parents said you're unstable." Every lie they spread grew legs and ran faster than I could respond. I found myself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering why I spent years breaking my back for people who treated me like a walking ATM with no feelings attached. And for the first time, I began to really question if I had ever meant anything to them beyond my bank account. The twist came from the last person I expected, my Aunt Maya, the only relative who ever treated me like a human being instead of a utility. She called me one night, her voice shaky, and said, "I need to tell you something before this goes any further." At first, I thought it was another lecture, another plea to be a good son. But then she said the words that made my stomach drop. "Your parents took out a loan in your name. Years ago." I felt the air leave my lungs. "What do you mean in my name?" She explained, piece by piece, that the loan was taken out when I was around 21, back when I barely knew how credit worked. My parents told the bank I approved it. They used their connections, forged a few signatures, and took the money. And now that loan, it was being used to pay for Lily's engagement parties, pre-wedding events, and emotional recovery spa days. My hands were shaking when I confronted them the next day. "Did you take out a loan under my name?" I asked. My dad didn't even blink. "Yes. We knew you'd pay it anyway." My mom added, "We needed it for the family. Don't make this dramatic." I stared at them, unable to process how calmly they said it, like they were telling me the weather forecast. There was no apology, no shame, just expectation. In that moment, something inside me snapped. This wasn't just pressure, this was entrapment. They weren't leaning on me, they were chaining me. Financially, legally, emotionally. All those years of supporting them suddenly felt like a setup I never saw coming. And for the first time in my life, I felt something stronger than guilt or obligation. I felt anger. Real, burning, clarifying anger. I walked out of that house knowing one thing with absolute certainty. I was done being their puppet. I wasn't letting them exploit me ever again. I called the meeting myself this time, not out of respect, but because I needed to look them in the eyes when I drew the line they never thought I'd draw. We sat in the living room, the same place where they'd presented those wedding plans like a royal decree. My hands were steady, my voice even steadier when I said, "I'm not paying for the wedding. And I'm not paying a loan I never agreed to." Silence hit the room like a slap. Then everything erupted at once. My dad shot up from the couch. "So you're abandoning your family duty now?" he barked. My mom pressed a hand to her chest like she was seconds from fainting. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." And then Lily, always the star of her own drama, burst into loud, attention-demanding tears. "You're jealous," she sobbed. "You can't stand that I'm getting married first. This is your way of ruining my happiness." Something inside me cracked open. "Jealous," I repeated softly, then louder. "Jealous?" I stood up and let everything spill out. Every bill I paid, every emergency I covered, every sacrifice I made while they pretended it was nothing. The hospital bills, the car repairs, Dad's dental surgery, the mortgage payment when you were behind, Lily's tuition you promised to handle but didn't. I paid all of it. My voice shook, not from fear, but from years of swallowed resentment finally rising to the surface. My dad scoffed. "That's what a good son is supposed to do. No gratitude, no acknowledgement, just entitlement packaged as tradition." Something about that sentence felt like the final nail sealing a coffin around who I used to be. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just exhaled, turned around, and walked toward the door. Behind me, the shouting kept going, guilt, anger, manipulation, but it all sounded distant, muffled, like I was underwater. And as I stepped outside, the tension clung to my skin like humidity, thick and suffocating. But I knew this was only the beginning of what was coming next. I thought walking away would give everyone space to calm down. I was wrong. My parents didn't just react, they detonated. Within 24 hours, they made a public announcement to the extended family that they were disowning me for my disrespect. They said it with the kind of dramatic flair usually reserved for soap operas, not real life. And just like that, the narrative shifted into something twisted beyond recognition. Apparently, I hadn't simply refused to pay for a wedding. No, according to them, I had cut them off financially to destroy Lily's happiness. I found out when my cousin texted me, "Bro, why would you do that to your sister?" I didn't even know what he meant until screenshots started pouring in. Then came Lily's part. She posted cryptic quotes on social media. "Some people hate seeing others happy. Imagine your own blood trying to ruin your future. My heart is broken by the one person I trusted." Comments flooded in. "Stay strong, queen. You don't need toxic people. Some siblings are jealous." And every post had people tagging me or demeaning me like I was some cartoon villain. Extended relatives I barely spoke to suddenly had strong opinions. Aunts called me selfish. Uncles lectured me about family duty. People who never once asked how I was doing were now experts on my character based on a story my parents fabricated in 5 minutes. The worst part? The lies spread further than family. Somehow, rumors reached my workplace. HR pulled me aside and asked if I was experiencing financial instability or family conflict impacting performance. Hearing my personal life twisted into a workplace risk assessment made me sick. Little by little, I felt society closing in. Friends distanced themselves, unsure what to believe. Family treated me like a traitor. Even colleagues watched me differently, like I was fragile, unstable, unpredictable. This was the beginning, not just of the fallout, but of a kind of loneliness I'd never felt before. A silence that made me wonder if I had ever actually belonged anywhere at all. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, a thin white envelope with my name printed in cold, sharp ink. I thought it was another bill, or maybe a bank statement. Instead, it was a notice showing my credit score had dropped over 100 points in a single month. I stared at the numbers, confused, until I saw the reason: delinquent loan payments. The loan, the one I never signed for, was finally coming to collect. By Friday, the calls began. Unknown numbers, blocked numbers, voicemails from collection agencies demanding immediate payment, threatening legal action, warning me about escalation procedures. Hearing strangers talk about my debt, like I was irresponsible or reckless, made my chest tighten with a humiliation I didn't deserve. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt a jolt of panic. Meanwhile, my social world was collapsing like a building losing its foundation. Friends I had known for years suddenly grew distant. Some stopped replying. Others sent hesitant texts like, "I don't know what happened between you and your family, but I hope you work it out." No one asked for my side. They just assumed I was the problem. I could feel myself shrinking, not physically, but internally, like my existence was fading from the spaces I once filled. One night, I sat alone in my dark apartment, the only light coming from the street lamp outside bleeding through the blinds. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything I thought I was and left an empty shell behind. I realized, painfully, that my entire identity had been built around fixing everyone else's chaos. My worth was tied to usefulness. My value was measured by what I could provide. And now that I wasn't useful anymore, there was nothing left for anyone to care about. That was my rock bottom, not the debt, not the lies, not the isolation. It was the moment I saw the truth. If I didn't choose myself now, I was going to drown in a life that was never mine to begin with. The morning after my rock bottom night, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years, a kind of quiet resolve that scared me and relieved me at the same time. I packed a single suitcase, grabbed my laptop, and drove 3 hours out of town to a place where no one knew me, no one expected anything from me, and no one had the power to twist my life into their narrative. On the way there, I pulled over at a gas station, bought a new SIM card, and changed my number on the spot. Then I blocked every single family member, my parents, Lily, the cousins, all of them. It felt like severing a limb, and yet, for the first time, I could breathe. The next step was harder. I met with a lawyer to discuss the fraudulent loan. Sitting in that polished office, listening to someone say, "You are legally a victim here," felt unreal. I'd spent so long believing I owed my family everything that it hadn't even occurred to me they might be the ones who owed me accountability. Hearing the lawyer lay out the steps, evidence, investigation, potential charges, made something inside me settle. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I was finally fighting back. As days turned into weeks, I started rebuilding my life piece by piece. I found a therapist who didn't flinch when I told her the truth about my family. I started budgeting properly, tracking expenses that were finally my own. I took long walks after work, breathing in the smell of trees instead of car exhaust and stress. My world felt smaller, but safer. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, emotional clarity began to take shape. I saw how deeply I had enabled their toxic behavior by always saying yes. How often I sacrificed myself to avoid their anger. How little of my own life I'd actually lived. One evening, sitting in my quiet new apartment with the window open and a soft breeze drifting in, I realized something I never expected. For the first time I could remember, I felt a sense of peace. I didn't plan for revenge. I didn't plot anything. I simply stepped out of the role they forced me into. And the moment I disappeared, everything they'd built on my back began to collapse. The first crack showed when Lily's fiancé realized none of the wedding invoices had been paid. Venue deposits, catering fees, photography contracts, all of them overdue. Without my money, their entire dream wedding crumbled overnight. I heard from a cousin later that Lily's fiancé had slammed his hand on the table during a planning meeting and said, "I'm not paying for her family's mess. If this doesn't get sorted, we're postponing." Lily apparently sobbed so loudly the neighbors heard. And my parents? They panicked. Because for the first time, they had to face the reality that money doesn't magically appear without me quietly fixing everything behind the scenes. Vendors who once loved them began threatening legal action. One photographer blasted them in a community group, calling them chronically irresponsible. The florist demanded double the deposit up front because they had a reputation for backing out. Even extended relatives who had once judged me suddenly realized the narrative didn't add up. What happened to all the funds? Didn't you say OP was unstable? Then why were you relying on him? Their lies were unraveling faster than they could patch them. Their reputation, the thing they valued more than honesty, more than fairness, more than me, started to sour publicly. They became that family in the community, the one who promised big, delivered nothing, and blamed everyone except themselves. And through all of it, they tried calling, and calling, and calling. New numbers, blocked numbers, texts from unknown lines. I didn't answer a single one. Finally, one evening, my Aunt Maya called, the only person I still trusted. She hesitated before saying, "I think you should know. Everything's falling apart over there. They don't know what to do." I sat there quietly, absorbing every word. Not with satisfaction, not with anger, but with a calm understanding that this was simply the natural consequence of removing myself from their chaos. They showed up at my door on a Sunday morning, all three of them. My parents stood stiffly, trying to look humble, while Lily hovered behind them with puffy eyes and a forced expression of fragility. I recognized the performance instantly. They weren't there out of remorse. They were there because they needed me, and for the first time in their lives, I wasn't available to save them. "Can we come in?" my mom asked softly, her voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. I opened the door, but didn't step aside. "Say what you came to say." My dad cleared his throat. "We need you back. The wedding is falling apart. Your sister is suffering." Lily sniffled dramatically. "Everything is ruined because you left. We can't do this without you." I just stared at them, letting the words bounce off me. Because I saw it, the manipulation behind every plea, the entitlement hiding under their remorse, the assumption that I would fold the moment they said they needed me. "I'm not coming back," I said quietly. "And I'm not fixing anything." My mom's face cracked instantly. "After everything we did for you? You're really this heartless?" My dad added, "You're supposed to be the responsible one. This isn't how family works." Lily stepped forward, tears dripping. "Don't you care about me at all?" I could feel the old reflex rising, guilt, obligation, the instinct to fix everything. But I pushed it down. "I cared for years," I said. "But I won't destroy myself for people who only love me when I'm useful." Silence. Real, heavy silence. They stood there, stunned, like they were finally seeing someone they never bothered to know. Eventually, they turned and walked away, not because they accepted it, but because for the first time, they had no leverage, no control, no power over me. And as the door clicked shut behind them, I knew something they didn't. The version of me they could manipulate was gone. Forever.